The coroner got on the phone and asked me one question. Was Woody taking any medication? And the only medication he was on was Zoloft. And she proceeds to say, we're going to take this drug with us. It might have something to do with his death.
Well, hello there, Obedient Rebel. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Allyson Chavez. So excited to have you on today. And also, like wherever you're tuning in, this could be, and I really think will be such a pivotal episode for you, just in the way that you look at what's going on around you in the quote unquote healthcare system, marketing, advertising, all of the things. So I have to tell you, I had clear back earlier this year, I went to this super cool networking event called Secret Knock, and I met some of the most incredible people I have ever met, including our guest today. And her story is so amazing. And her experience that she has gone through with the healthcare system, with her husband, she's got a very, very compelling story. And I was like, Kim, I need to have you on my podcast because my audience needs you. They need to hear this from your perspective, from your experience as a layperson in the United States. And so I am just so thrilled to have Kim Witczak join us for today's episode. Kim, thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
So you have a really interesting background as far as like you've been in advertising for decades, right? You've done marketing, like you understand all of this, but you had quite an interesting experience with what you call the spider web of, I call it quote unquote, the healthcare system. It's more like the sick care system. But will you like tell us your journey with that and your husband's journey and what you discovered?
Sure. Like you said, I love that you called it the obedient rebel because I kind of feel like in some ways I was kind of chosen for the work that I do today, my accidental, which I call the accidental advocate because my drug safety advocacy work, I would never have chose this work, but it kind of chose my greatest purpose, chose me. And so really, like you said, I've spent my entire career in advertising, which I cannot believe is decades now.
You're not old enough for it to be decades.
But it is decades, trust me. And so I've spent my entire life in advertising. Life was going exactly like I had planned. I was producer traveling all over the world on productions, and I was happily married to my husband of 10 years. And it was 2003. He had just started his dream job with a startup company and was having trouble sleeping. And so he was kind of a guy that always needed 8 hours of sleep. I mean, we used to joke about it. If he didn't get his sleep, he would have no problem falling asleep at a dinner party, which drove me crazy. But anyways, so he was having trouble sleeping and he went to his doctor, a GP that he's seen for a long time. And Woody, I always called him the Humpty Dumpty because he was an athlete. So doctors fixed him, right? They fixed stitches when or a broken bone or his knee surgery. So he went to his doctor and told him he was having trouble sleeping. And he was sent home with a 3-week sample pack of an antidepressant, Zoloft, and told him that it would take the edge off and help him sleep. I happened to be out of the country the first 3 weeks that he got this drug, this prescription, or I guess samples at that time. And I was in New Zealand, so I was as far away from being a part of Woody's everyday life. Well, when I came back from my 3 weeks of being out of town, I will never forget something. Woody walked through our back door. I was super excited to see him completely drenched in his blue dress shirt. He fell into a fetal position and it got him, Kim, you got to help me. I don't know what's happened to me. My head's outside my body. You got to help me. And I remember like, what? And so we calmed him down. We did yoga breathing. We prayed. Eventually, we told him to call the doctor because he felt like he was outside his body looking in. And his doctor said, you got to give it 4 to 6 weeks to kick in. So the next, which is pretty common and which is what they tell everybody with antidepressants, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to work. So every day, the next week of his life, Woody came home and was like, what do you think about acupuncture? I'm going to beat this feeling in his head. Everything was beat this feeling in his head. So I had one last push for my production, and I was left to go out of town, and it was August 6th, and I had not heard from Woody yet all day, which is like not like him because we talked all the time during the day. And so finally, I was still in the studio. It's about 9 o'clock Detroit time. And I call my dad and I go, Dad, do me a favor. I haven't heard from Woody all day. Can you go and see if he's okay? Like he's been having trouble sleeping. So I'm afraid maybe he hit his head or something. Well, my dad goes over to our house, the car's outside, goes through the house, not there, opens the garage door, and Woody's there hanging. I get a call. Literally, my dad's like, he's dead. I'm like, what? I'm like, how do you know he's dead? And he's like, he's hanging. I'm like, what? Like literally in one, if you know how you hear about those, you get a phone call that changes everything in your life. That was literally the call that changed everything in my life. Like in that moment, the life that I knew no longer existed, but also like his death, like nothing made sense. I'm like, Woody did not have a history of depression. He did not have a history of mental illness or anything like that. Like literally, he went from not sleeping to head outside the body in 3 weeks to hanging in a total of 5 weeks. And literally that night, when I was in Detroit trying to figure out how to get home, the coroner got on the phone and asked me one question. Was Woody taking any medication? And the only medication he was on was Zoloft. And she proceeds to say, we're going to take this drug with us. It might have something to do with his death. So that was clue number one. That same day that Woody was found, the front page of our newspaper had an article that said the UK finds a link between antidepressants and suicide in teens. Woody left no note. We left notes all the time for each other because we both traveled for our work. And in some ways, I believe those two, very, very key pieces of information were his note in some way, because it literally, with everything in my body saying, there's no way Woody took his own life. Like, this makes no sense. Like, what? That would have been the last way you would ever have thought he would have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so that almost immediately, Googled, my brother-in-law goes home and Googles Zoloft and suicide, had no idea that the FDA held hearings in 1991 on the emergence of violence and suicide with Prozac alone. And at that point, every one of those members on the FDA advisory committee took money from companies making antidepressant products. This is 2003. Fast forward, now we have Paxil on the market, Zoloft on the market, and approved for kids. So that really became, that's the impetus for why I call myself the advocate. And it became our mission to go get black box suicide warnings added to the antidepressants. So almost immediately we were out in DC. And so that really is the story behind what now I call the spider web, and how it my whole life kind of all comes together with an ugly side of a tapestry, but the front side is now starts to make sense.
Well, and I would imagine that you have saved so many lives through this without even knowing it. And so first and foremost, I am so sorry that you went through this, and so sorry to lose your husband. And thank you for making this your mission, even though it chose you and you didn't choose it. I think you were very uniquely qualified. We were talking before we started recording about your whole career in advertising and marketing, and you saw it as this spider web and could see what was you could see all of the interwoven little strands of it and how insidious it was with your background in advertising and marketing. And I think that puts you in such a beautiful position to be such a huge instrument in God's hands to bring light to this horrible problem and plan, quite honestly, by Big Pharma. And
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about the spider web. Can you go into that and what you started
Sure.
discovering?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So one of the things, obviously, going out to DC, I had no background in any of going out and advocating at DC, but um, I call it the battle for Woody. So we did that. We also did a lot of telling Woody's story in the media because back in the day, the media actually did investigate, but this was a big deal back in 2004 and 2006 were the hearings. And I also had a lawsuit against Pfizer. And in the lawsuit, we got all these documents out from under seal that showed how a lot of the threads work, meaning like ghostwriting. I'd never heard of ghostwriting, but ghostwriting is when the company may pay for, they actually, like one of the documents we have, it showed that Pfizer already knew that it was running a article on social anxiety. They already had what placement it was going to be in, what date, but it said author TBD. So they didn't have the author assigned to it. So that's this whole idea of ghostwriting and other people, like the companies write it, and then they get doctors or big key opinion leaders, which I now learned is another whole aspect of it, which are big, they might be a doctor who does research in an area and they start without even knowing they could be a part of like promoting an agenda, and companies go out and specifically find, and it's no different than social media influencers, right? But these are like big medical influencers or scientists or doctors and whatnot, and it kind of promotes the agenda, but making it all seem like it's a legitimate way around things, right? Yeah, it's fascinating. And where I learned a lot of the spider web, and I'll tell you, is I love to travel. I love to travel internationally. And I would go with my lawyers to conferences that were happening in other parts of the world, not in the US. And I remember one really pivotal conference that I went to in Amsterdam in 2010. It was called Selling Sickness. And it was a 3-day conference. It was a 3-day conference put on by the Dutch government and a couple of nonprofits, one called Healthy Skepticism. And almost every example that they used throughout the days of the conference were from America. And there was only a handful of us from the US. And I remember saying, why isn't this conversation happening in our country? Like, because clearly we are one of only 2 countries in the world that allow drug ads on TV, right? Most countries do not allow it. And so that, doesn't just control advertising revenue, but it also controls media, like what kind of narratives get talked about, I mean, even though they say church and state separate from advertising and editorial, it influences it. It influences the type of stories, who gets out there, what kind of agendas are being pushed because money talks. And so, but when I was at that conference, I remember saying, well, you should bring it to our country. And they were like, no, no. So I ended up bringing a conference to the US in 2013 called Selling Sickness. And it was to discuss all the different aspects of the spider web. And the spider web, like I think I named a couple of them, but the ghostwriting, our screening forms. Like, how many of you will go to the doctor and they give you this screening form at the time when go, is this your insurance? Which is, it's the PHQ-9 form, and it's where they screen for depression. And they might, and nobody knows at the very bottom it says a generous donation by Pfizer Inc. And 3 key opinion leaders that have taken a lot of money from pharmaceutical companies, but they're big name doctors in the field of like depression. And so that is, in my mind, that's a funnel, a sales funnel, right? So
Wow.
because,
Yeah.
and I don't know, do you know what form I'm talking about? It's like where it says, in the last 2 weeks, have you felt sad? Have you felt, and I think you rate it 1 through 5.
Mhm.
That was a marketing tool that was created by Pfizer Marketing. And so,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and so once you start understanding the web, you're like, the doctor and patient are trapped. And it is built on blind trust, right? Like, I think
Mhm.
and I say we, I'm a layperson, we, the patient, we trust our doctors, and our doctors trust that the FDA has done their job, but understanding how clinical, like I didn't realize that the doctors don't learn how the FDA works and how drugs come to market in med school. They don't understand this. They don't get that is not part of their training. Their training, so academic institutions is another place where Big Pharma like puts a bunch of their money and controls like even the clinical research. And but I think I used to be of the mindset, oh, the FDA does um, the studies, right, for
Yeah.
drugs. They do not. They do not. The drug companies design the studies, they get the FDA to agree to it, but they control all the data. They control all the narrative when the FDA gets the initial studies. So everything is kind of controlled by like it's a brilliant system. It's actually a brilliant system for a marketer.
Oh, well, yeah, brilliantly dark. So when it says FDA approved, that just means they paid the FDA enough? Or like they're not that the FDA tested it, but the FDA so how does a drug company get the FDA to approve it? Is it just lobbyists and money and all of those things?
No, well, it's interesting. So I was telling you at the beginning about the 1991 committee,
Mm,
FDA advisory committee.
uh,
I actually have a seat on that. I earned a seat on that same committee, the psychopharmacologic advisory, as a consumer representative. So it's been interesting to have that to see how drugs that do come to market, but how it normally works. Almost there's a something that was created, it's called PDUFA, Prescription Drug User Fee Act, where basically for every new drug application that gets put into the FDA, and was, it really came out of the AIDS crisis day. Remember when everybody was saying it's taken too long for the FDA to approve drugs, and so really that was um, the result of all this public pressure on the FDA to approve drugs faster. So the PDUFA process is basically with every new drug application, the drug company pays a percentage of fee to the FDA to review and to pay for review, of their studies.
uh-huh.
But in reality, the FDA it used to be, and I still like to see that it happens, but two double-blinded placebo-controlled studies. But a lot of times right now, things are being fast-tracked. Again, another thing that was created through Congress, which allows drug companies to, as long as there's an unmet need, and there's no current drug on the market for it, they can apply for a fast tracking mechanism. And so all of this game is really built for industry. And again, I will say that the FDA serves as it's a hurdle that you have to, anybody who wants to put a drug company that wants to put a product on the market, it has to go through the FDA. So it's really a hurdle that you have to go through. And meaning you have to go, you have to have that the placebo, or not the placebo, that the benefits outweigh the risks and it works better than a placebo. But that all depends, like when you start really understanding, like in the case of antidepressants, if you only need two clinical trials to get it proved, where it's basically saying it's better than placebo, right? It has to just be statistically significant. But you have to remember, clinical trials, they're going to always put the best people, the best scenarios in a trial because they need good results, right?
Mhm.
And it's, the real world might be on multiple medications, but they're not testing it on what does it do to a person on multiple medications. It's just against placebo in that short term, right? Most of the antidepressants were 6 to 8 weeks, and people are on taking them for years,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of issues with the system. And again, it's the system we have. But I always say I don't think before Woody died, truthfully, I never gave it a second thought.
Mhm.
You see it advertised as safe and effective, FDA approved. And I used to think it was like the good housekeeping stamp of approval. Like, all right, you got a good, or when we used to do, I've always worked in cars. And so we'd always want to get the Consumer Reports Best Buy award, and then we'd put it on our ads. And I always have kind of thought about like FDA approval, like, oh, here's your little star, FDA approved, like, yeah, yeah. But the reality is that's why when I see all this, I'm like, oh, wait, this is a business. And that's when I started to think about it no different. I'm like, it's a business and they need patients because patients are basically, and doctors, because they're their customers.
Yeah.
And so, not that I'm not, when I say all this, this is all under, also, I must say, I'm not anti meds and medication. I'm not anti any of it, but I am about pro information and
Mhm.
transparency. And I think there's got to be accountability when people's lives, like, I'll never forget. And I'm looking at this button. We went to the FDA after and told Woody's story. And I thought this is where I really started realizing the FDA does not look at, they should be the real world, what's happening. And we told our stories, and there was a couple families that we went and had private meeting with the top FDA guy. And literally he said to me, and I thought it would be like the NTSB, like when there's a plane crash, that they'd want to go and like investigate. Oh, no,
Mhm.
no. They literally said, oh, these are just anecdote stories. So I created this whole button campaign that we all wear, saying we are not anecdotes, we matter. And all these families, because they literally called Woody an anecdote, and they said because they didn't see it in the double-blinded placebo study. And so that is where I really, also encourage like the drug companies, when you're talking about these people, the numbers, these are actually somebody's love, somebody's child, somebody's mother, somebody's husband, and a small percent. Like we need, like, don't go hiding that information because these are products we're putting in our bodies,
Mhm.
and every body is different. Everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody's, the way we process. So information is good. Like, I don't know why you would want to keep information from people. All it is information. It's not going to, for most people, they're still going to take your product, but at least they should know if they see head outside the body, that they had a chance. Like, we didn't have a chance. We didn't have a
No.
chance.
No, you didn't. Well, and it's because they're selling sickness. They're like, to your point, they're not selling health. And so what, and information is power. And
Mhm.
so if they can keep the information out of your hands and keep you ignorant, then they keep all the power. And it's interesting to have this conversation now, 5 years post COVID, with all of the freedoms that were taken away from that and all of the shame that happened with people who didn't want to take the vaccination, and they're like, no, it's safe and effective, and it was neither of those things. And to think, like pre 2020, it was, I trust my doctor, and the doctor trusts the pharmaceutical, trusts the drug companies. But post, like, there is this level of not even skepticism, but absolute disbelief and distrust, and rightly so, because of the forcing that had happened, all of the canceling that was going on. Like, wow, like that turned lights on for me with like,
Yeah.
oh, they actually don't have our best interests at heart. They
Well,
have
and
their
you're I think you're absolutely right. I think I was too early, meaning when we were having those conferences in 2013, banging on the door, but I feel like we were only talking to the people who already were skeptic, right? Healthy
Mhm,
skepticism is a really great way to live. But when
mhm.
when the COVID hit, right? I remember immediately flags went off for me. I'm like, wait, you're giving these companies, I was able to sue Pfizer, right? But with the COVID, with all the COVID jabs, you the government gave them complete legal immunity for any harms that were happened. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're giving Pfizer, one of the companies that has paid more fines in fees because of off-label marketing and harms and all the lawsuits. And you're giving them, like, why would I trust that they're going to not do the right thing? I already knew what they did because we got all this stuff that came out from under seal.
Mm.
So I was like, so that was a red flag. But then when I started seeing, not even to talk about the freedoms, but when I saw bring your vaccination card in for a free donut for a day every year or for a year, I thought, wait, is this sales promotion? Like, oh yeah, they were
I
had
didn't know that was going on.
yeah, Krispy Kreme. You could bring your vaccine card in for a donut a day for a year. And if you were, they didn't want to like discriminate at this point because it was before people were getting, mandated. You could still get one a week if you were unvaccinated. Uh, and so I was like, wait, I thought this is about health. Like eating a Krispy Kreme donut is not about health.
Oh, I had no idea that was that happened.
Oh yeah.
Holy
And they were paying people money to get the shots, like encouraging low income areas, $100 a shot. $100 is a lot of money for people. Like, so I just watch. So when you just started it off saying like, there's just a total distrust. I want to say I blame like the system. They weren't honest with people. If they had been honest, hey, this hasn't been tested for very long. We think it not everybody like they weren't honest. And when you break that trust from with the public, and they broke my trust a long time ago. So,
God.
so my eyes were wakened then, but when you with these mass amounts, because I think every one of us paid the price during this time. And so, I look at it and go, oh, wait, we were all trapped in this mess. And now it's going to take a lot of time to earn that trust back.
It is. Well, and not only were they not that I wanna go off on a rant, however, with that said, not only were they not honest, but then they gaslit the entire public, anybody who dared even question, very, very respected medical doctors, canceled and tried to be discredited and their careers ruined and even, whoa! So then there was, gaslighting that,
Yeah.
we can understand, we haven't had a whole lot of time to test this, and yet the fact that they were like, "Oh, no, 2 weeks, we're good. Other drugs take 10 years before they come to market, but trust us. We're
Trust
fine.
trust us. But
Trust
you
us."
couldn't even question. So, like, you're
No.
right, like, those respectable and again, I'm just a layperson. Um, I think back to my high school science.
Mhm.
I didn't love science, but I remember one thing. A part of what science is the constant testing of hypothesis. Right? And so
Mhm.
you couldn't all of a sudden now it was like trust the experts and you couldn't even question. And so
Mhm.
I think that idea of questioning is really important to even question our doctors when they tell you to take something why. We should all be like super curious about it. But I saw that trick with gaslighting. So back in the day when Woody died and we were all like there were big hearings. I was involved with Senate hearings basically what we're seeing now with the COVID vax injured and stuff.
Mhm.
But I was involved and people were calling me like literally here's another part of the science or the spider web, the patient advisory, all those patient groups, a lot of them get funding from pharma. So the National Alliance for Mentally Ill, NAMI, after I testified, which if you go and look at all their funders, all you have to go is look at funding, who's funding these companies, or American Heart Association, American Cancer Society. They basically, if you've ever, they become, it's a marketing tool, right? So they get and it's still they do good work. So I'm not discrediting that. But, you have to look at what kind of, what are they speaking? And so like NAMI, after I testified in the Senate, they went around and told all the senators where both Hillary and Obama were both senators, and went around and said, don't believe a word she's saying. She's a Scientologist. So I'm like, I am? And so this whole discrediting campaign, that's why when COVID hit, and they're automatically start calling people anti-vaxxers. I'm like, what? I've already seen this game. I've already seen this gameplay.
Wow. So this
Yeah.
game's been playing for decades,
Yeah,
a very long time.
it's kind of the same playbook out of big tobacco, big chemical, big food, big pharma, and, that could probably be another whole spider web, but, mine has really just been in that pharma world, and I really, truly, truly, truly thought it was just an issue with antidepressants, but I realized that it was really the whole system of, our products that we take and
Mhm.
our medical products.
Mhm. I had a scare that I shared, with my audience in, 2024 with my mental health, and I was very sure because 'cause I'm very in tune with my body, I'm very intuitive, and I'm like, "I am in anxiety and depression that's caused by perimenopause, and so I've got stuff going on with my hormones." But n no, no, no. They sent me right to a psychiatrist who put me on freaking antipsychotics. I'm like, I'm not I'm not psychotic, like, I'm not having hallucinations. I just want to die, but I'm not suicidal, and I know how old I am. But it was like, "No, we don't test hormones here, so we're gonna put you on a bunch of antipsychotics, a whole bunch of sleep aids because I couldn't sleep I'd go for days without sleeping, and then antidepressants and all like, this whole cocktail that they just, like, threw at me." And I was like, it's my hormones. And they're like, well, we don't test hormones. We don't test hormones. And so finally I was like, okay, this is an acute situation. So fine, I'll play this little game. But I knew I wasn't getting better. I was just being sedated at night. I wasn't getting any deep
Yeah.
sleep. And I'm like, you know what? I would rather be tired and with all of my faculties than going in this fog because I've been sedated every night and then I can't function. So I actually ended up weaning myself off of all of them and getting my hormones tested. And sure enough, gee, but do you know, no pharmaceuticals will actually do hormone compounding. And so you can get an antidepressant, you get a month's worth for $3. I know because I just got a prescription filled last week. But my hormone compounding, $50 or more.
That's amazing, and also, like, I love 2 things that you said. First of all, you are super in tune with your body, right? And so intuitively, everything was like, "No, I think it's my hormones, like, I'm going through the change in life." And you knew, right? And so I think there is something about that power of, like, really listening, because I think God didn't give us bodies that these things didn't exist before, right? And so, like, there's advances to help advances, but, like, you knew something didn't make sense, and to really trust that, because I remember after Woody died, I went to my doctor and she said, "Do you think you need something?" And I looked at her, I go, I think it's what killed my husband," which she thought I was crazy. And then I go, "But aren't I supposed to hurt? Like, my husband died." And she goes, "Yeah, but you don't need to." And I was like, everything in my body was like, "Yeah, I do. I need to feel it. Like, it doesn't, of taking that pill's never bringing him back. Like, sure, it might be that acute situation that people need it, and I'm whatever people need to do, but it's that idea that I don't need to hurt. Yeah, the only way out is through, And so I just realized that this is what we do. Like, the system, just easier. Here, take a pill instead of, like you said, hey, what if we would have tested our hormones? Or the other one that I'm hearing a lot of is doing enzymes, testing your body. And I've
Mhm.
always thought that I would have thought, like, as a clinical, again, my naive self, I'm like, you mean you're doing clinical trials and you're not actually looking at who best would be the type of person that this product would work on? Like, you wouldn't wanna know that information? But I think to me, again, how hard is it to do the hard right and not the easy wrong? Like, I know they wanna sell to a bunch of people, but what if you found out that these kind of bodies, this is the kind of person that would be helpful information to a doctor, I would think. Or, hey, you know what? When somebody comes in, if Allyson comes in or somebody like Allyson and she's feeling this way, instead of saying, "Oh, it's your mind," you're just, you're going through something. We're going to give you all this cocktail that they're just trying it. Because remember, studies, the initial clinical trials were on the product against a placebo, not real world of what it is like when you put a sleep med with a pain med with a, antipsychotic and antidepressant. That isn't tested in a lab. That's tested real world on you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So, this has been such an amazing conversation. I need to have you back. I would love to have you back because I wanna talk to you for hours
Oh
about
my God, I know I love talking. I know I'm such a junkie on this. I talk a million miles a minute because I've been living it, but I say all this because I don't want anybody to learn the hard way like we did. And so I just want people to just ask questions and be okay, like not being okay or like asking questions. Like we just blindly trusted. And now I look back and it's been 22 years and I'm like, wow, it's super obvious, now,
Yeah.
but it wasn't then because we didn't ask questions.
Yeah, yeah, and we're not encouraged. Certainly,
Mhm.
even these days, we're not encouraged to ask questions. And I don't want to end this note on like bummer, sorry. And so, but because I want to end this note on hope, because that's what you represent to me is hope for change, hope that, and also like you can be the catalyst for change. Like you did make a difference. You still are making a difference. So, what do you recommend for us to be able to make a difference, just even in our own lives? What can we do?
Yeah, well, I love this question because you have to understand people see me as strong, but if they actually knew who I was before this, I was a person that never stood up. I was the good girl. I was the quiet one. I never would challenge authority. I actually didn't even know if my voice mattered. But when something like this happened, I was like, and it just, this like right and wrong, like it just, something didn't work for me. And I feel like that became bigger than my fear, right? And also with just doing one thing, even if it's something that doesn't make sense to you, just doing one thing, like, and believe that you have the ability. Because I think we've also been told that one voice doesn't matter. Actually, one voice is actually what starts the butterfly effect. And one voice, like you inspire somebody, then they'd go do what they're passionate about or what they would like to see fixed. And that's how the world gets better. And I truly, truly believe it is that your voice does matter and is powerful. And it's more powerful than, and when I think about like I look back at when we were throwing Woody's ashes out and there was a literally, he always said, I want my ashes in the middle of Lake Michigan. And we were throwing them out, and all of a sudden, this red book floats by, literally in the middle of the ocean or Lake Michigan, which looks like an
Yeah.
ocean. And I looked at my brother-in-law and I said, "Does that say what I think it does?" And he goes, "Yeah." In gold letters, it said the Holy Bible. And literally, that was like my like thing that I have to go back to, and I share it now because that wasn't, it was for me at that time in that moment, but now it's for me to like share it because I believe God did not make us small. God made us like he's inside, and that lives inside us, and it says, that we can do all things through him. And so I am a living, trust me, I get all emotional. I'm like, I'm a living testament of that because this was not who I was before.
Yeah. Oh, Kim, thank you. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me, is that whole scripture. And absolutely, yes. And thank you for sharing that because somebody needed that particular story from you. That, no, I'm not going to call it a story, that experience. They needed to hear that you had that experience, that it can feel so big and so daunting, but we can do all things through Christ who
Yeah.
strengthens us. So thank you. Now I know people are going to want to know, how do I find you? And you actually created a super cool infographic about the spider web and all of that. So tell us how we can find you. How can we get that infographic? All those good things.
Sure. You can get the infographic at kimwitczak.com. And so that's my website. And you can also get a lot of other information of things I'm doing and link to Woody Matters. as well as I'm on X. I do a lot of advocacy around drug safety. That works. So if you want to follow me there, or Instagram.
Beautiful. And we'll have all of those, all of her social media links in the description too. So you can just go right there and connect with her. And you want to, because I mean, Kim is, you can tell like she is so amazing. And so Kim, again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on this episode. And to those of you who are listening, those of you who are watching on YouTube or wherever, please share this episode with people that come to your mind. Trust that. Trust that. Share the episode, like the episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel, rate and review. But more importantly than anything, let's share this, because we are so powerful alone, but we are exponentially powerful together. Obey God's laws. Rebel against your rules that keep you small, society's rules that keep you small, and watch the miracles pour in. We'll see you next time.